Bhagavatam. So, Hare Krishna, dear devotees, thank you very much for joining us today. I wanted to seek your good wishes, blessings, so that we can continue with the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, 12th chapter, hopefully 12th and 13th chapters today.
Shri Krishna Sakalabhyaprado He Anyanatan Swakara Avachitan Dinastamyutyo Chataradnikashan Grinadito Teshtatitena Vishmitaha. Krishna saw that all the cowherd boys who did not know anyone but him as their lord had now gone out of his hand and were helpless, having entered like straws into the fire of the abdomen of Agasur, who was death personified. It was intolerable for Krishna to be separated from his friends, the cowherd boys. Therefore, as if seeing that this had been arranged by his internal potency, Krishna was momentarily struck with wonder and unsure of what to do.
Very interesting how the Supreme Lord himself is not sure what to do sometimes when his internal potency, Yogamaya, takes over. So this chapter is called The Killing of the Demon Agasur. One day, Krishna woke up early and blew on his bugle to call his friends to play. At that time, hundreds and thousands of cowherd boys came out of their respective homes in Brijabhumi and joined Krishna, keeping before them their hundreds and thousands of groups of calves. As they entered the forest, they decorated themselves with fruits, green leaves, bunches of flowers, peacock feathers, and soft minerals. They would play various games of which Krishna would be the center. Some imitated the buzzing of bumblebees, bzz, and others imitate the voice of the cuckoo. Some boys imitated flying birds, some imitated swans, some jumped into the trees imitating monkeys. Sometimes Krishna would go to a somewhat distant place to see the beauty of the forest. Then all the other boys would run to accompany him, each one saying, I shall be the first to run and touch Krishna. I shall touch Krishna first. In this way, they enjoyed life by repeatedly touching Krishna. Yogis undergo severe austerities and penances for many births, but they may still be unable to taste even a particle of dust from the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. How greatly fortunate are the inhabitants of Brajabhumi, Vrindavan, with whom the Lord personally lived and who saw the Lord face to face. So now we're moving into Agasur territory. When they were enjoying their picnic, Agasur, the younger brother of Putana and Bakasura, appeared there, desiring to kill Krishna and his companions. The demon, so he wanted revenge for the death of his younger brother and sister, or older brother and sister. The demon, who had been sent by Kamsa, assumed the following form. He was a huge python, as thick as a big mountain and 8 miles long. He spread his mouth like a big cave in the mountains, laying down the road expecting to swallow Krishna and the cowherd boys. His lower lip rested on the surface of the earth, and his upper lip was touching the clouds in the sky. The borders of his mouth resembled the sides of a big cave in a mountain, and the middle of his mouth was as dark as possible. His tongue resembled a broad traffic way. His breath was like a warm wind, and his eyes blazed like fire. So quite a terrifying account of Agasur. Having assumed this form, Agasur laid on the road. Krishna's friends, the cowherd boys, thought that the demon's form was one of the most beautiful spots of Vrindavan. Krishna's friends questioned each other about the identity of the demon. Is this creature dead? Or is it actually a living python with its mouth spread wide just to swallow us up? So they were not scared of him because Krishna was with them. The gigantic figure of the python became a subject for their sporting pleasure, and they began to laugh, confident that even if this figure were dangerous, Krishna was there to protect them. In this way, they proceeded towards the mouth of the gigantic figure. Thus, they looked at the beautiful face of Krishna, the enemy of Bakasura, and laughing loudly and clapping their hands, they entered the mouth of the python. Krishna knew everything about Aghasura. Therefore, he wanted to forbid his friends to enter the demon's mouth. But in the meantime, all the cowherd boys, along with their groups of calves, entered the mouth of that gigantic figure. Krishna was waiting outside, and Aghasura was waiting for Krishna, thinking that as soon as Krishna entered, he would close his mouth so that everyone would die. While waiting for Krishna, he refrained from swallowing the boys. In the meantime, Krishna was thinking of how to save the boy and kill Aghasura. Thus he entered the mouth of the giant Asura. When he was within the demon's mouth, along with his friends, Krishna expanded his body. The demon also extended his body to a very large size. Nonetheless, his breathing stopped and he suffocated because Krishna became very huge. The demon's life air, however, could not pass through any outlet, and therefore it finally burst out through a hole in the top of the demon's head. After this, Krishna, by casting his nectarian glance upon his friends, brought them back to life. That pretty much died because Aghasura was breathing out poison. And with pleasure, they came out unhurt. Thus Krishna encouraged all the demigods, and they expressed their pleasure and happiness. They were in the sky, enjoying this pastime. When Lord Brahma heard the wonderful ceremony going on near his planet, accompanied by music and song and sound of Jai Jai, he immediately came down to see the function. Upon seeing so much glorification of Lord Krishna, he was completely astonished. Although Aghasura's purpose was to kill Krishna, for a moment Aghasura thought of Krishna with devotion. When the boys were so happy and jolly, and he was all his life so envious because he's a python, he saw the joyful nature of the Gopas, and he for one moment thought, I wonder what it's like to be with Krishna. And that one moment was enough for Krishna to liberate this demon. For a moment, Aghasura thought of Krishna with devotion, and Krishna and his associates wanted to sport within Aghasura's mouth. Anyone who thinks of Krishna even for a moment, even by force, can attain salvation. There are many instances of this, and among them is Aghasura, who attained the salvation of Sarupya Mukti, associate of the Lord. So that just one moment of desire to be with Krishna was enough to give him personal association of the Lord, even though he tried to kill the Lord. Parikshit Maharaj, he questioned Sukadeva Goswami. When this pastime was performed, Krishna was only 5 years old. 1 year later, when he was 6 years old, he stepped into the Poganda age. So that's from 6 to 10. And this pastime was disclosed at that time to the inhabitants of Braj. A whole year had passed. So Parikshit Maharaj asked, why is it that this pastime was disclosed only after 1 year? And yet the inhabitants of Braj thought it had been performed that very day. So with this question, the 12th chapter ends. Static, Sukadeva Goswami externally lost consciousness because he was reciting the pastimes of Krishna and he's very attached to Krishna. And thereafter, with great difficulty, he revived his external sensory perception and began to speak. So this is the pastime of Agasur, huge python. The Gopas, they knew what they were doing. They were going into the python's mouth, but they also know Krishna's with us. Nothing's going to happen. We can always trust Krishna. Krishna always protects his devotees because they simply depend on him, nothing else. So they relied on Krishna. They entered into that mouth. So that's the end of chapter 12. Any questions, any comments? Okay, let's move to chapter 13. Oh,
Prabhuji,
yes.
did the Gopas and all these stayed in the mouth 1 year? In Agasur's mouth?
No, that is the question that was asked by Parikshit Maharaj. Why was this pastime only described 1 year after Agasur was killed? So now this next chapter answers that question.
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Okay, chapter 13 answers the question.
Joka samsvato keshu sneha valyaptam anvaham sane nihishima varite yatha krishne tvarpu vratavat. Although the inhabitants of Rajbhumi, the cowherd men and cowherd women, previously had more affection for Krishna than for their own children, now for 1 year their affection for their own sons continuously increased, for Krishna had now become their sons. There was no limit to the increment of their affection for their sons, who are now Krishna. Every day they found new inspiration for loving their children as much as they loved Krishna.
So this is the answer coming up, the answer. And this is really interesting. That anyway, I won't, let's just go through the pastime and then we can explain what this verse means. The stealing of the boys and the calves by Brahma. This chapter is Lord Brahma's attempt to take away the calves and the Gopas. And it also describes the bewilderment of Brahma and then how his illusion was cleared by Krishna. Sukadeva Goswami continued, although the activities of Supreme Lord are very confidential. You can ask him. No ordinary man being able to understand them, I shall speak about them to you. For spiritual masters explain to a submissive disciple, even subject matters that are very confidential and difficult to understand. So Sukadeva Goswami says to Parikshit Maharaj, I will tell you why. They had to wait a year. They waited a year before telling anything about this story. Although the incident concerning Agasur had been performed 1 year before, when the cowherd boys were 5 years old, when they were 6 years old, they said, it happened today. What happened was this. After killing Agasur, Krishna, along with his associates, the cowherd boys, went for a picnic within the forest. After killing Agasur, Lord Krishna brought his friends to the bank. Oh no, this comes a little later. This comes a little later. Oh, it doesn't actually, sorry. So after killing Agasur, that's what we did last chapter. So Sukadeva Goswami is continuing with the pastime. They killed Agasur. And then Krishna became hungry. Killing demons is, makes you hungry. So they sat down on the banks of the Yamuna. They found a nice spot and they took lunch and they played on the soft, sandy Yamuna banks. So this is a really amazing picture, actually. Krishna, Balaram, his Gopa friends, enjoying a picnic. Sitting down on the ground, keeping Krishna in the center, they began to open their different boxes brought from home. Lord Sri Krishna was seated in the center of the circle, and all the boys kept their faces towards him. they ate and constantly enjoyed seeing the Lord face to face. It was as if each Gopa was with Krishna on his own. They felt, Krishna is with me, Krishna is talking to me, Krishna is looking at me. But they all felt like that. This is the beauty of the Supreme Lord. He can make you feel very, very important. While taking lunch, each boy began to manifest different kinds of relations with the Lord, and they enjoyed each other's company with joking words. While thus enjoying lunch with his friends, Lord Krishna's flute was pushed within the belt of his cloth. So there you go. There's his flute there. Normally he'd have it out, but while lunch, put it into his cloth. That morning, Madhu Mangal, Krishna's chubby Brahmin friend, asked his mother, Purnamasi, to fix something for his tiffin. But she only managed to give him a large gulab jamun from the previous day. So when they all sat together to share the meals amongst themselves, Madhu Mangal was very shy of his lunch. He decided to eat it hurriedly. Krishna, however, so Madhu Mangal had this huge gulab jamun. Krishna asked him, let me have a little bit. Madhu Mangal said, no, he put it in his mouth. And his mouth was completely full. Krishna at that time pressed his cheeks and the juice came out of either side of Madhu Mangal's mouth. And it came onto Krishna's body. And Krishna began to lick the juice and said, very tasty, very, very tasty. Now, somebody was looking, one of the devatas, Lord Brahma himself, the chief devata, demigod. He was looking, he was watching this pastime, and he was shocked. He couldn't believe that the Lord would do that. He would take the remnants of his devotee. So in his state, in his mental state of perhaps this is not God, he's a little boy, he decided to test Krishna. In the meantime, the calves had gone deep into the forest. Krishna went looking for them. Now, lesson from this is this transaction between the devotee of the Lord, really loving exchange. Krishna is very loving and he wants to share our lives with us if we let him in. This is the important point. Do we let the Lord in so that we can enjoy pastimes with him? The calves, being allured by green grass, gradually went far away. Therefore, Krishna's associates became a little agitated and wanted to bring back the calves. So they were eating or about to start eating. Yet the calves had disappeared. Krishna, however, encouraged the boys by saying, "You eat your tiffin without being agitated. I shall go and find the calves." In this way, the Lord went deep into the forest. At that time, Brahma, to show his power and examine the potency of Krishna, he took away all the calves, and also he took away the cowherd boys. He kept them in a secluded place. When Krishna was unable to find the calves and the cowherd boys, he began to search for them, as if he could not understand what was happening. Because again, if you remember, Yogamaya had taken over. Then Krishna understood that this was a trick by Brahma. So Brahma, although he was informed that little boy, cowherd boy, was Supreme Personality of Godhead, he wanted to see more glorious pastimes of the Lord. Thus he stole all these calves and cowherd boys, took them to a different place for only a moment. Lord Krishna, therefore, in spite of his searching for the calves, could not find them. He even lost his boyfriends on the bank of the Yamuna where they had been taking their lunch. In the form of a cowherd boy, Lord Krishna was very little in comparison to Brahma. But because he is the Godhead, he could immediately understand that all the calves and boys was been stolen by Brahma. Krishna thought, Brahma has taken all the boys and calves. How can I return to Vrindavan alone? the mothers will be aggrieved. Lesson to learn from that: never underestimate Krishna. Krishna can do anything, anytime, any place. We might think this is a little hard for Krishna to sort out. Why? He can sort out anything. Then the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, in order to please Lord Brahma, as well as his own associates and their mothers, expanded himself to become the calves and the boys, exactly as they were before. So Brahma kidnapped them, and his one moment is a year. So he kidnapped them for a year. So for that 1 year, Krishna, he expanded himself as the boys and the calves, exactly as they were. By his Vasudeva feature, Krishna simultaneously expanded himself into the exact number of missing cowherd boys and calves, with their exact bodily features, their particular types of hands, legs, and other limbs, their sticks, bugles, flutes, lunch bags, their particular type of dress, ornaments placed in various ways, their names, ages, forms, and their special activities and characteristics. He completely copied them. By expanding himself in this way, beautiful Krishna proved the statement, Samagra Jagad Vishnu Mayam. Lord Vishnu is all pervading. So there you go. And he converted himself. His Vasudeva feature expanded, and he became cowherd boys and calves. In this way, he discovered another pastime. A special feature of this pastime was that the mothers of the cowherd boys thus became more attached to their respective sons, and the cows became more attached to their calves. The mothers of the boys, upon hearing the sound of the flutes and bugles being played by their sons, immediately rose from their household tasks. They would do that normally anyway when they would come, but this time there was something different. Lifted their boys onto their laps, embraced them with both arms, began to feed them with their breast milk, which flowed forth because of extreme love, especially for Krishna. They didn't know it was Krishna, but even not knowing, if the Lord is present, then automatically that love in the Brijbasis comes through. The mothers took care of the boys by massaging them with oil, bathing them, smearing their bodies with sandalwood paste, decorating them with ornaments, chanting protective prayers, decorating their bodies with tilak and giving them food. From the very beginning, the gopis had motherly affection for Krishna. Indeed, so even before this took place, the gopis loved Krishna just like their son. Indeed, their affection for Krishna exceeded even their affection for their own sons. In displaying their affection, they had thus distinguished between Krishna and their sons. But now that distinction disappeared because Krishna had become their son. Similarly, the cows had much more affection for their calves, as the gopas had also towards their sons. So there you go. There's a lot of affection between the gopas and the gopis and the children and the cows and the calves. Thus expanding himself as the boys and the calves, Krishna entered Vrindavan. The residents had no knowledge of what had happened. Actually, the boys' affection, the cows' affection for their calves and elderly gopis' affection for their boys causelessly increased. Their affection increased naturally, even though the cows and boys were not their offspring. The cows and elderly gopis of Vrindavan had greater affection for Krishna than their own offspring. Balaram noticed this. So this will happen a little bit later on. Because Krishna, lesson from that, because Krishna is the Supreme Lord, the mothers and cows felt greater attraction for him than their own children. He is the super soul, and we are also spirit souls. He is ultimately our Father. And that's why we have a very strong connection with Krishna. So one day, almost a year later, Krishna and Balaram were tending the calves at the foot of Govardhan Hill. The Gopas were on top of the hill tending the cows. So these are the elderly Gopas. When the cows saw their calves, they dashed down the hill out of great affection for the calves, who were actually expansions of Krishna. The cowherd men were ashamed and angry and followed their cows down the hill with great difficulty. But when they came down and saw their own sons, they melted with affection because they were Krishna. Even some of the cows that were running down the hill, they gave birth to new calves, but their affection for the older cows was greater because that was Krishna himself. Now, when Balaram saw this, he was astonished. He saw the special treatment between the Gopas and their children and the cows and their calves. He was unable to understand the reason for it. He couldn't understand why is it that they're feeling so much affection for their children. And he tried to figure it out. But finally, he observed with the eyes of transcendental knowledge that all the cowherd boys and calves were expansions of Krishna. So he asked Krishna, what happened? And then Krishna told him, Brahma pinched the cowherd boys and calves, and I have expanded myself. So then 1 full year had passed. Brahma, for whom it was only a moment. So for Brahma, it was just a moment. He took the cows and the boys away for a moment. He put them in a special place. He returned and he saw that Krishna was still enjoying as usual with his friends and the calves and the cows. Brahma had stolen the calves and the boys. So even after thinking for some time, he could not figure out who were the real boys and calves and who are false. So he kept looking. He said, I stole them, but they're still playing with Krishna. What's going on? Oops. Yeah, so we just did that. This was when he was 3 years and 11 months old. He's quite young still. Then Krishna exhibited all the calves and the cowherd boys as 4-armed forms of Narayan. Brahma could then understand Krishna's potency. He was astonished by the pastimes of Krishna, his worshipable Lord. And what did he see? He saw all the calves and boys appear to have complexions, the color of bluish rain clouds, similar to Krishna's color. They were all dressed in yellow silken garments. They had 4 arms, holding conch shell, disc, mace, and lotus flower in their hands. They wore helmets on their heads, earrings on their ears, garlands of forest flowers around their necks. On the right side of their chests were the emblem of the goddess of fortune. They wore armlets on their arms, the kastuba gem around their neck, marked with the 3 lines like a conch shell. And they had bracelets on their wrists, bangles on their ankles, ornaments on their feet, sacred belt around their waists, fully clothed with fresh, tender garlands of tulsi leaves, and they resembled the increasing light of the moon. All the Vishnu Murtis were surrounded by opulence headed by Amina Siddhi. That's the 8-fold mystical powers, by the mystic potencies headed by Aja, and by the 24 elements of the material world headed by Mahat Tattva. Then Brahma saw the Kala, the time factor, Swabhav, one's own nature, samskars, reformation, karma, desires, karma, fruitive activities, the gunas, 3 most material natures. The Vishnu Murtis all had external, unlimited forms, full of knowledge and bliss, existing beyond the influence of time. He saw at the same time all the calves and boys as the Lord's expansion. He's really fortunate. Lord Brahma had the greatest darshan. Lord Brahma, the Lord of Saraswati, was mystified. What is this, he thought. And then he was not able to see. Krishna removed the sight. Lord Krishna, understanding Brahma's position, then at once removed the curtain of Yoga Maya. Krishna bestowed his causeless mercy upon Brahma and released him from illusion. So this is the final bit of this chapter. Lord Brahma's external consciousness then revived. He stood up just like a dead man coming back to life. Opening his eyes with great difficulty, he saw the universe along with himself. Then he immediately saw Vrindavan before him, filled with desire trees. Though naturally inimical, both humans and fierce animals lived together there in transcendental friendship. Then Lord Brahma saw Krishna, the absolute truth, just as before, with a morsel of food in his hand, searching everywhere for the calves and his cowherd friends. This is really extraordinary, how the Lord is bewildering the topmost living entity in this material world so easily. Lord Brahma hastily got down from his swan carrier, fell down and touched the lotus feet of Lord Krishna with the tips of the 4 crowns on his head. Offering his obeisances, he bathed the lotus feet of the Lord with the water of his tears of joy. Rising and falling again and again at the lotus feet of Lord Krishna for a long time, Brahma remembered the Lord's greatness he had just seen. Lord Brahma, his head bent low, his mind concentrated, his body trembling, very humbly began with faltering prayers to offer praises to Lord Krishna. So that we can look at tomorrow, the chapter 14 and 15. It's in this nice picture, nice painting, which just describes what we explained. And Brahma made a mistake. We will also make mistakes of testing Krishna. If you do this, I believe you'll be. If you save me from this, I will believe you're there. We make a deal we make a pact with Krishna sometimes. Because we do not believe that he's a Supreme Lord. It's best to learn from Brahma and not make that mistake. So having full faith in Krishna, no matter what happens, he will protect us. No matter what my condition of life is, it's sanctioned by the Lord. And he won't do anything unless it's for my betterment. It's a very good faith to have that. So I wanted to ask any questions. Otherwise, we can go to Madhusan Prabhu to go take us through the instructions of chapters 12 and 13.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
You know, we are devotees. So it is the mercy of the Lord. We're still being protected by him. That's why we're chanting his holy name since years and years. This is his mercy, and we are protected still. Now you have come to give us such classes. It is his mercy again. Haribol, Prabhu.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your kind encouragement. I'm simply an idiot. And
No,
inspired by
you're showing your humility, Prabhu. You're showing your humility. And we must follow your qualities, your behavior, everything. And we are so lucky that every day we are watching, we are following these classes, and it just makes us become a bit more strong.
Thank you very much. It's very kind of you to say. And, thank you for your encouragement. Hare Krishna.
Yes, I would second that. And I think in this group there are so many people, but only people who are destined to have this little bit of encouragement will come. So that's Krishna's mercy again.
Definitely. Definitely. I agree with you. Without his mercy, and we'll see that in the next chapter, nothing can happen, absolutely nothing can happen. Can't understand him without his blessings. Not that we understand him anyway, but thank you. Madhusan Babu?
Hi, Haribol, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, sorry I joined late. I was stuck in the
That's okay.
traffic for a bit, and then
Sure.
nowadays, traffic is going
It's bad,
crazy.
yeah. I heard
I
it's
thought
bad.
lockdown was so, but yeah, it's very nice. So Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Okay.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So these two pastimes, obviously there are some more pastimes coming, like killing of demons. And so chapter 12, in this chapter, we get to understand how Krishna can resolve a dangerous situation by saving all the cowherd boys, killing the demon Agasur, and then giving him that Sarupi Mukti, being promoted to the Vaikuntha planets to live with the same four-armed bodily features as Vishnu. The explanation of how this is so may be summarized as follows. So because Krishna had obviously the coward boys and all, they had gone into Agasur's body, open big mouth, and like a big cave, they thought, oh, this looks like fun, let's go in there.
Mhm.
And then Krishna follows and they say, oh dear, this is a dangerous situation now. This python has got some ill intentions. So then obviously Krishna goes in there and then he kills Agasur. So because the effulgence came from the python's body and became purified, attaining spiritual Suddha Sattva, freedom from material contamination, because Krishna had stayed within the serpent's body even after serpent's death. So that's amazing,
Mhm.
Python has died, Krishna is still in there. Krishna's effulgence body has purified the body actually. So, Krishna somehow, whatever he does, acts in a way that is of ultimate benefit to all.
Mhm.
So it benefited, he saved the coward boys and all that, Kilagasur, gave him mukti, gave him all that, and then resolved, and Krishna saved the day, as they call it, but no, it's just Krishna's mercy. The only reason we'll do it, because he wants to be merciful to even Agasur, even with bad intentions. So, but then we are being trained in Krishna consciousness, we are being encouraged. So Srila Prabhupada emphasizes in the purport that one should be trained how to glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead by one's respective qualities. So whether you get educated, your austerities, penances, and in the modern world, business, industry, education, so on, whatever
Mhm.
way, we can, all should be engaged in glorifying the Lord.
Mhm.
So then everyone in the world will be happy. So whatever way we can, we should glorify. And that's how we should be trained like that. So, like, for example, my son may be a doctor, or my daughter is a psychotherapist and all that. But she uses that in order to help people and then ultimately to serve Krishna in some way or the other. So we're using Zoom as well like this and
Mhm.
creating little community to do the Bhagavatam is also nice. So in that way, we would become happy. So that's what Prabhupada is emphasizing. And then in chapter 13, I like even the last slide I saw, and in that slide you said that you mentioned that Brahma, when Krishna revealed him the Vaikuntha, Vrindavan, and in
Mhm.
that there was the humans and animals who are living in friendship, in transcendental
Mhm.
kind of relationship. I was trying to understand that, that in the spiritual world, there is, so this little bit in chapter 13, I'll mention it in this instruction, that in these pastimes of Brahma's stealing the coward boys and calves for a moment from his time perspective by his mystic powers, was even more mystified. So Brahma is even more mystified, although he's got mystic powers, but he's mystified by Krishna's supreme mysticism as he expands into those same coward boys and calves. So that pastime, how Krishna is expanded for a year or so
Mhm.
as boys and calves, and then that kind of increases the love and affection and for the Brajvasis and the cows and all that. So you see how even Balaram could not understand all this at first, you know. So we get to understand that. So we get to understand how in the material world, affection is contaminated by Rajogun and Tamogun. But in the Suddha Sattva, the affection that maintains the devotees is transcendental. So this is where I understood that when you read that little bit. I said, because we are in the material world and we feel this Rajogun, Tamogun, the desires and the affections that we have for people, we create enemies very quickly, or we become envious of people very quickly because of those gunas. Otherwise, in the Suddha Sattva, these same affections and the desires would be transcendental. So that's why in that verse that you read, in the section, on one of your last slide, I thought, or the one before, but it mentioned that in Vrindavan, Brahma saw the humans and the fierce animals were all living in friendship. So I said, how can they be friendly, you know, because they are in transcendental position. So affection felt by the families and cows for Krishna's expanded forms of cowherd boys and calves were transcendental. And as we become more Krishna conscious, our desires and affection towards all living entities can become transcendental because Krishna is in everyone's heart as super soul. So this is how we should be really seeing, you know, we should become more compassionate, you know, not out there, you know, cow killing or anything like that. So we become more affectionate and see everything in a transcendental vision. So Lord Chaitanya, when he was in the forest, he made all the animals dance as well, tiger and all that, didn't he?
Yeah.
So that's the transcendental position of Krishna.
Very good.
And Brahma realizes that as well. Okay, Hari Bol, Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Very good. Anybody else? Any questions? Any comments? Otherwise, we can stop. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Okay, we'll hopefully do chapters 14 and 15 if I can get my act together tomorrow. And unfortunately, Karuna hasn't come today, so we can. Oh, yeah, yeah. So we'd like to pray for the good health of devotees. That was Shamir. I don't know if you remember Shamir from Coventry. He used to serve in the Coventry. He was in Tanzania.
Yeah,
And
I
he
was.
died.
So, I meant to tell you yesterday, Prabhu. I forgot. Yeah, he was from Leicester, and he did serve Coventry Temple a lot. His Nana Bapa was Krishnadas Maharaj's disciple. Leela.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. And Samir was a tall guy, and he
Tall
did
guy,
contribute. Yeah.
Yeah, he had a
Okay,
good
I meant
sense
to
of
tell you
humor.
yesterday. Yeah,
Yeah,
I forgot to tell you yesterday. Sorry.
yeah, that was a bit of a shock. So
Yeah, he died. He passed away with COVID in Tanzania, and his
yeah,
mother
I
is
got it.
suffering from
Yeah,
COVID as well.
yeah.
So that was the latest I heard from Parvati, our god sister. That
Right.
is her mom, her mommy. Yeah, his mommy. Sorry, his mommy. Yeah, from Leicester.
Yes.
Parvati.
Yeah.
Parvati.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, Haribo.
Yeah. No, it's sad to hear that. Let's pray for him especially. Okay, let's sing Dev Bhagwan Ki Jai. Let me just do this bit. Nasimha Kavacham Vakshe Praladino Pultampura Sarvaraksham Punyam Sarvapadavanashanam Sarvasampatkaram Chaiva Swarga Moksha Padayakam
Dhyatva Narsimha Devesham Hemasimhasanam Sitam Vivitasyanti Nayanam Sharadindu Samaprabham Lakshmyalingitamamangam Vibhuti Chaturbhujam Komalangam Swarna Kundalam Shobhitam Shriyashi Shobhito Raksham Ratna Keyuramoditam Tapta Kanchana Sankasham Pita Nirmala Vasanam Indradi Suramulishta Spuram Manikya Deeptivi Virajita Padadvandan Shankha Chakradi Hetivi Garutmata Chavinaya Suyamanam Mundamitam Swahit Kamalam Samvasam Kritva Tu Kavacham Patit Narshimo Me Shirapatu Loka Rakshata Sambhava Swargopi Sambhavasa Phala Me Rakshatu Dvanim Narshimo Me Dishopatu Soma Suryagni Lochana Smritam Me Patu Narhari Muni Varyastuti Priya Nasham Me Shimanasastu Mukham Lakshmi Mukham Priya Sarva Vidyadi Papatu Narshimo Rashanam Mama Vaktam Patu Indu Adanam Sada Pralada Vandita Narshima Patu Me Kantam Skando Bhuvad Anantakrit Divyasa Shobhito Bhuja Narshima Patu Me Bhujo Karo Me Deva Varado Narshima Patu Sarvata Hidayam Yogi Sadyascha Nivasam Patu Me Hari Madhyam Patu Hiranyaksha Vaksha Kukshi Vidarana Nabhi Me Patu Narhari Swanabhi Brahma Samstuta Brahmanda Kotaya Katyam Yasya So Patu Me Katim Guya Me Patu Guyana Mantranam Guya Rupadrik Guru Manobhava Papatu Janu Nira Rupadrik Jange Patu Dalabhara Hartoyo Asono Keshari Suraraja Padapatu Pado Me Nirishvara Sahasra Sesha Purusha Patu Me Sarva Shastanam Manograha Parvato Patu Mahavirajo Agnita Mahavishnu Dakshinetu Mahajwalastu Nerita Paschime Patu Sarveshu Dishi Me Sarvato Mukha Narshima Patu Vyayayam Somyam Bhushana Vigraha Ishayam Patu Bhadro Me Sarva Mangala Dayaka Samsara Bhayata Patu Mrityur Mrityur Nikeshari Idam Narshima Kavacham Pralada Mukha Manditam Bhaktinam Yapate Nityam Sarva Prapepa Muchyate Putravandanavam Loke Dirgayu Upajayate Yam Yam Kamayate Kamam Tam Tam Prapnoti Samsaya Sarvata Jayam Apnoti Sarvata Vijayi Bhavet Bhumi Antariksha Divyana Grahana Minivaranam Vishikoraga Sambhuta Vishapaharanam Param Brahma Rakshasha Yakshanam Turutsarana Karanam Ujeva Talla Patreva Kavacham Likitam Shubham Karamule Titanyena Siddhyeyu Karma Siddhya Deva Shura Manasyeshu Swam Swam Eva Jayam Lavet Eka Sandhyam Tisandhyam Va Yapate Niyato Nara Sarva Mangala Mangalyam Bhuktim Muktim Cha Vindati Dvatim Sati Sahasrani Patet Sudatmanam Kavachasya Mantrasya Mantrasiddhi Prajayate Anena Mantra Rajena Kirtva Bhishmashma Mantanam Tilakam Prabhayastu Tasya Grahabhayam Hare Triyavaram Japamanastu Datam Varyabhimantracha Prashayedyo Naramantam Narsimadayam Acharit Tasya Roga Panashyanti Yecha Kukupsi Sampava Kimatra Bahunoktena Narsima Sadasho Bhavet Manasa Chittitam Yattu Sachapnoti Asamsayam Garjayantam Garjayantam Nijabhuja Patalam Sopayantam Hatantam Dipyantam Tapyantam Divibhuvititicham Shepyantam Shipantam Krandantam Roshiyantam Dishi Dishi Satatam Samhartam Parhantam
Vikshantam Purnayantam Karnikaya Satya Divya Simam Namami Iti Shri Brahmana Purane Parvodoktam Shri Narsimha Kavacham Sampurnam Nrsimhadev ki Jai. Shinkavach ki Jai. Okay. Priyansh, are you there? Would you like to chant?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Go for it.
Yes, Prabhuji. Om Namo Bhagavate Narasimhaya. Namaste Jaste Kise. Hare Rave Bhava. Vajranaka Vajradamtra. Kalmashayam. Vandaya Vande Tamo Visakasa. Om Swaha. Abhayam Atmanivetam Shom. Astasta Vishwasya Kala Yasiratam. Jayanto Bhutani Shiva Vitoriam Manastabadam Ujatara Kridam Aveshatano Motivate Magaragara Madhavetavanka Zango Erisha Bhagavati Shama Yatrana Vidya Paritoshtan Sejajaduram Mutatindrayaknya Yatsangalakam Yadavida Vaibhavam Tiram Musam Prashatam Himanasam Aratigado Natashati Biratangatam Ovaina Seve Tamu Pundavikram Yasyaste Bhakti Bhagavatya Kinchana Sarver Gunaista Rasama Sate Suram Karava Bhaktasta Padama Guna Tina Satiravato Vuhi Deri Sakra Bhagavan Sharirinam Atma Dehasana Mixitam Yatvanam Stam Yadisachute Mahatvam Ayasaram Patina Tasmarajan Vihavanam Namasmahava Padainya Vimunam Vitvagankam Sampati Chakravalam Narsimhaparam Rajatat Kuto Vayamiti Mukram Viram Mahavishnu Valantam Sarvato Mukam Vashamam Vishanam Bhatram Rutyum Namamyaham.
Horrible. Does anybody want to say it? Otherwise, I'll carry on.
You carry on.
Hare Krishna. Chaitanya Charitamrita 2.8.5. Nrsimhadev Bhagavan ki jai, Bhakta Prahlad ki jai. Shri Nrsimha Jaya Jaya Nrsimha Jaya Jaya Nrsimha Praladesha Jaya Padma Mukha Padma Bringa. Shri Nrsimha Jaya Nrsimha Jaya Jaya Nrsimha Praladesha Jaya Padma Mukha Padma Bringa. Shri Nrsimha Jaya Nrsimha Jaya Jaya Nrsimha Praladesha Jaya Padma Mukha Padma Bringa. All glories to Sri Nrsimhadev, all glories to Nrsimhadev, the Lord of Prahlad. All glories to you who are like a honeybee, always hovering above the lotus face of Sri. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Uma Devi, would you like to sing?
Hare Krishna, Dandavat
Hare
Pranam
Krishna.
Prabhu. Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya.
प्रह्लादलाददायिने प्रह्लादलाददायिने हिरण्यकाशिपुरुक्षः शीलताङ्कनकायाले इतो नरसिंहो परतो नरसिंहो यतो यतो यामि ततो नरसिंहो बहिः नरसिंहो हृदये नरसिंहो नरसिंहमये शरणं प्रपदे तव करकमलवरे नाकम् अद्भुतशृङ्गार दलिता हिरण्यकशिपु तनुभृङ्ग केशवधृत नरहरिरूप जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे केशवधृत नरहरिरूप जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव नरसिंह